Why generational wealth skips so many families, Kenyan families. So your grandfather owned land, let's say, something like that. Ndio. Not a little, actual acres, bro. Land. The kind of land that today will make you a millionaire before you turn even 20. And yet, here you are. You are renting a bed sitter. Some of us are sending money home at the end of the month instead of receiving it. Starting from zero, like nobody in your bloodline ever owned anything. So, what happened? What happened, guys? What really happened? Because it wasn't stolen in one dramatic moment. Nobody kicked down the door like, bah, I'm taking everything. It leaked out slowly over 3 generations. Okay, through 100 small decisions that all felt completely normal at the time. And once you see the leaks, you can't unsee them, bro. In your own family, right now, bro. So here's the myth that we tell ourselves: that we live to say poverty is a mindset. That's what we like to say. Say it enough times and it becomes a personal trait. Some families just don't know how to manage money. Quotes. Some people are, quotes, just not disciplined. That's the story, which is comfortable because it puts the blame entirely on the person holding the empty hands today. And none of that is put, the blame is not put 100 years of the system that made sure that the hands holding nothing at that time go to where they are. I don't know if I'm making sense. Generational wealth isn't mainly about discipline, guys. It's about leaks. First the leaks, and the mystery stops being mystery. If you see these leaks, and I have 4 leaks right now, I've been thinking, and I've definitely gotten 4 leaks so far. Leak one is um the land that had to feed everyone. That's the first leak. Sorry. Your grandfather's land wasn't willed to one heir the way it would in a family built for compounding wealth. It was split between 5 sons, between 6 sons, sometimes more. It's expected to also split it amongst their own children. Do the math over the generations. And a farm that once fed a family and paid school fees became a plot too small to farm, too small to sell for anything meaningful, too small to bear an asset at all. It becomes a liability with a little deed attached to it. Something everyone have owns and nobody can develop because the moment you try, 4 cousins shows up with opinions. That's how it is here, bro. This wasn't a personal failure, guys. It was a cultural default. So, land as something you divide fairly amongst some, not something you consolidate and compound. This was fair to actually a son in the 1970s. It's fatal for families wealth by 2026, bro. Doesn't work. The second leak here is the funeral that costs more than the inheritance. And we all know this. Let's say, for example, somebody, God forbid, though, but somebody in your family dies, and suddenly there is a harambe, cows need to be slaughtered, a tents need to be hired, relatives are flying in from countries, and everyone needs to be fed for 4 days, 4 good days. Coffin, choir, catering, cars, a send-off that can run into hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, for a family that was never sitting on that kind of cash to begin with, guys. So where does it even come from? Where does it even come from? The land gets mortgaged, the savings get whipped. Sometimes the very asset that was supposed to be inherited gets sold to pay the funeral of the same person who was supposed to leave it behind. We call it the deed, the honoring. We call it the deed. We call it the honoring of the dead. And is it that? But it's also one of the most efficient wealth destruction machines this country has ever normalized. And almost nobody is allowed to say that part out loud without sounding disrespectful, bro. And I'm sorry if I'm sounding disrespectful towards anybody right now. The third leak is the black tax, the salary that isn't even yours to begin with. So I think most of us have relieved it. You get a job, Cindy. You, the good one, the one your whole family has been praying for you since you were in primary school, bro. And the moment the first salary lands, it's not entirely yours. School fees for our young siblings, mother's hospital bill, a cousin's rent, an uncle's small business that needs a small capital. None of this requires. Sorry, this is so upsetting for me because I'm almost living this kind of life really in the next few. But none of these requests are unreasonable on their own. Okay, that's what makes the whole thing so hard to resist. It's hard. Each one individually is love, family, and duty. That's how it is in Africa, bro. But stuck together, month after month, they mean the first person in the family to earn real money is often the last person to be able to save it at all. You become the family's safety net before you become your own foundation. And a safety net, by definition, doesn't compound, bro. It doesn't. It just gets pulled tighter every time someone falls. That's how it is, bro. But here's the other leak. Nobody writes a will, and this actually hits deep, man. Just ask around. Most families don't have one. They don't have a will completely, bro. Not because they don't have anything worth protecting. Actually, plenty of us do. But because talking about death and inheritance while someone is still alive feels almost cursed. Like planning the funerals of someone who hasn't died yet. And we all know this, bro. We're all gonna die. Memento mori, guys. The Stoics said this. For you to live a fulfilling life, you need to remember every day that you're gonna die. We all share this. It's the inevitable. So when the death comes, guys, there's no document. Just memory and the grief and relative versions of what always understood. What was always understood. What That's exactly the gap Kenyan courts spend years untangling. Land cases involving disputes are some of the most common and slowest in the system. Years in court, legal fees eating whatever was left. Sometimes the land sits idle the entire time because nobody can legally touch it until the case is settled, bro. It's like your assets are frozen. Your assets are completely frozen, man. The oil doesn't get stolen by an outsider, it gets frozen, then eaten by the very family it was meant to protect. Bro, I mean, man, I've seen families dispute over land, bro. People carrying things called pangas. Bro, we need to stop, man. We need to change, man. This is so sorry. So diabolical, man. But here's the real reason, man. The game was rigged upstream, man. So that's what we all know. This game is rigged completely. So anyway, here's the part that's harder to sit with. Okay, even a family that avoids every single about leak above is still playing on a board that was never built for them to win big. None of us are meant to win big, bro. From the banking system rewards people who already have collateral damage, meaning the very land your family is holding onto for dear life is worth less as security than a title deed in a wealthier part of the city. You know, the tax structure hits salaried employees the hardest, bro. Look, I have this cousin of mine. She's a working class, but Every dollar she gets at the end of the month, bro, it's always accounted for. Every, like every. Man, this thing is so fucking good. Now, while the wealthiest Kenyans hold their money in the kinds of assets and structures that are taxed the lightest, if at all. I mean, there are people in Kenya here are not even taxed, but I don't know who they are. Okay, I don't even know who they are. Access to the rooms where real capital moves. They have access to these things. Investment groups, boardrooms, inside land deals, has also run through networks that most families were never invited into. Going back to who got which land at independence is in the first place. In this land, we even have Americans who have huge sums of land which belong to them. How? Even though never even born here. This country is amazing every day, bro. None of this is an accident, by the way. It's not a conspiracy meeting in a dark room either. It's as simple and more durable than that. It's architecture, bro. Everything is by design. Rules and systems built by people who benefit from them, maintained by their children, and largely invisible to everyone standing outside the walls. The elites in this country didn't get lucky for 3 generations in a row. They built and kept the structure that make luck repeatable for people who already have a hard start and nearly impossible for everyone else. These people have been planning for years, yo. For years. This ain't a joke, guys, by the way. So, what do you do with all of this anyway? You can't fix the banking system from your bedroom. You can't rewrite the landlords before your next payday. But you can see the leaks now. You can be the generation that writes the will nobody else wrote. That has the uncomfortable conversations about funeral budget before their bodies to bury. And I mean, this is hard because you can't go to somebody and tell them, yo, you're gonna die soon, man. What do you think? They might think you're out to get out for yourself. That's the psychology about Africans, bro. It's so hard to deal with us. It's so hard. Every family that eventually builds generation wealth in this country will have one thing in common, okay? Somewhere in the bloodline, someone got tired of watching it leak. They and decides to be the plug inside of the hole. That could be just you, bro. That could be just you. For me, this is gonna be me, and I'm telling you guys, man, I'm gonna make so fucking a lot of money, bro. I really wanna make generation wealth for myself and keep it under my name. Like I wanna be immortal, bro. Like how Jesus is immortal. Anyway, I don't know if I'm making any sense. The last thing I'd say is your grandfather's land didn't disappear by accident. Okay, just know that. Understanding exactly how it disappeared is the first asset nobody can take from you.